become whole and complete with your decisions and your actions because you knew what you knew. That's why you did what you did.
Like failing to make a decision is also a decision. You know what I mean?
The foundational secret to happiness is your brain.
You're worried about your reputation with everybody else because you don't have a good one with you.
Our life right now is a reflection of our thinking, because how we think determines what we focus on. It determines how we feel. It determines what we do. And so really the sum of our thinking really reflects our day-to-day life, in our relationships, in our health, in our habits, in our career. You know, I always thought it was interesting back in school, they teach you more what to think, but not how to think.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big challenges in a world where everything is being outsourced overseas, jobs, right? Or it's being automated. There's software that could do a lot of, left brain jobs, or there's, something like artificial intelligence. What do we have as human beings? What makes us human and makes us valuable in life, in the workplace? And I think it's our ability to think, our ability to solve problems, our ability to make really good decisions. But I think it's one of those things people take for granted because we're not just conscious of our thinking. They say we have an average of 60,000 thoughts a day. The challenge is 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday and the day before that. So how do we create growth? How do we stretch ourselves to new levels? And so I love this because I feel like you make one little distinction in the way you think differently. And there's a Oliver Wendell Holmes quote that says, a man's, mind once stretched by a new idea never regains its original dimensions. And so I want people to be able to think in a way that makes them more productive, allows them to perform better, allows them also greater peace of mind. Because in this world we've had this conversation in past episodes about digital distraction and digital depression and digital overload. It's weighing on people's health. This world where people are comparing themselves to other people on social media world, where they're comparing themselves to this highly filtered life of, highlight reel of everyone else's life. But that all comes down to our ability to think, the ability to think for ourselves, to produce new results.
That's so powerful, man, because thinking is everything, really. It's and I've said this before, our perception is our reality. And it all has to do with what we're thinking and how we're thinking about ourself in relation to our environment, ourself in relation to ourself. And so I think it's of the utmost importance for us to really understand our thinking a little bit more. And that's why I'm really happy to have you on today. But also, how can we optimize our thinking? So one of the first things I want to ask you about has to do with decision making, because that's a big component of our thinking that has a huge impact on the results we get in our lives. So what are some of the new insights, some of the things you've been coming across lately in teaching in regards to decision making?
Yeah, I can't think exactly that our life is a reflection of all the decisions, the sum total of all the decisions we made to this point. Where we're going to live, what we're going to do, who we're going to be with, and such. And so these daily decisions, a lot of people are suffering from decision fatigue. This, and it's a big health concern. It's just people are wasting their mental energy on decisions that really don't matter in their life. And really, I think it comes down to, I tweeted this a few years ago. I said, the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. The most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing, because people are getting really good at things that don't really matter, or they're using their decisions on things that really don't matter. We've had this conversation in the past about some leaders who are wearing the same outfit pretty much every day because they don't want to waste one of their good decisions. They buy 10 of those shirts so they don't have to think about, or meal prep, and they don't want to be able to waste that. But I did a podcast recently and I called it How to Work Smart versus Working Hard. And everyone always says, yes, of course I want to work smarter and not harder. I filmed it actually in a power plant, an actual power plant. And I opened it with this story that basically said this: one day, this really busy power plant just shuts down out of nowhere, and it's dead silent. And the employees are running around with their head cut off, not knowing what to do. The operations manager, after hours, doesn't know what to do. Nobody can solve the problem. So the operations manager picks up the phone, calls a local technician, and luckily the technician was in the area, and he says, "You got to help me. We're losing all this business. Time is money. We're going to shut down. Please save us." He was like, technician's like, "You're lucky. I'm right around the corner." He shows up and he walks around the power plant, and he goes to one beam. Now this power plant is full of different beams, right? And on those beams have all these different electrical boxes. And he goes to one specific electrical box, and he takes out a marker and he puts a big X on it. And he opens up the box, and inside, as you would expect, there are bolts, there are wires, there are screws. Out of all of that, he goes to one specific screw. He turns it not a quarter of an inch, and then bam, the entire power plant lights up. And the technician's like, thank you so much. You saved the day. You saved our business. How much do I owe you? And the technician looks at him and he says, that will be $10,000. And then the operations manager was like, you must be crazy. You were here for 5 minutes. All you did was turn one screw. Any of us could have turned that screw. He's like, give me an itemized bill. And he's like, no problem. Technician reaches in his back pocket, takes out his notebook, scribbles on it for a second, tears out the page, gives it to the operations manager. The operations manager looks at it and says, I understand. He goes to his desk, takes out his checkbook, writes a check for $10,000, hands it to the man. And you zoom in on that bill and it says this: turning screw, $1. Knowing what screw to turn, $9,999. And my message to everybody who's listening is not that you have a screw loose. It's two things. Number one, we live in the knowledge economy where knowledge is not only power, it's profit, right? Specialized knowledge. That's why I love your show. And I learned so much because it's not just the have and have-nots. It's those who know and those who don't know, right? And those who know wellness and optimization and human performance, and those who just don't know better. And so there's that gap, and that's why I dedicate my life to accelerated learning. But the other reason I tell this story is not only so you could be an expert at what you do, is that there are usually one or two screws. There's one beam, there's one box, one or two screws that really are what I call a focal point. A focal point. It's one or two things. They call it, other people have called it a lead domino, right? One of the first early dominoes you hit and it knocks down other things. In military, they call it a forced multiplier, meaning that for the same amount of input, you get multiple outputs or multiple rewards. So my life, based on, my learning difficulties that I had growing up from my head injury, my sleep issues, which you've helped me a lot with, those deficits has created really a big drive in me wanting to get the most out of the energy that I have. When we're talking about resources, like going back to MacGyver, he has very little resources, but he has a lot of internal resourcefulness. And I feel like every single person listening to this has a lot of internal resourcefulness. It's things that might not be on an asset sheet, but are things like your creativity, your decision making, your ability to solve problems, your ability to meta-think, think about your thinking, your self-awareness. And that's really the owner's manual. And so when it comes to decision making, I'm really excited about this because, again, if you could just think about some of the bad decisions we've made in our life and the cost that it's had for us. I'm a big proponent on, we've had this conversation about mistakes, and a lot of people, as we grow older, we're afraid of making mistakes and we're not making decisions. And even, I would say, not like failing to make a decision is also a decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
sure. Like when people have a decision about what to eat or not, they go into default mode. They're still making a decision. So I feel like part of it is decision is it's a fitness. So you want to build your decision-making muscles.
Oftentimes people are just casual with their conversations, not understanding that they're actually setting something in motion. Oh, my poor back. Oh, I don't like this person. Gossiping, talking bad about themselves even. They're setting things in motion. So I like to say, I don't want to say what I don't want to experience. I want to say what I want to experience. So I'll say it's a magnificent day. Life is good. There's a way out of this. There's an answer to this issue. There's a solution somewhere. I'm going to stay there until that becomes flesh. But it's practiced because individuals, particularly now, people have normalized negativity. They've made fear popular. You know what I mean? And that's become, you're an oddball if in fact you're operating at a different level. They think you're just weird, And so you'd rather be an oddball in a crazy world than to be normal in a crazy world, you know. Yeah, but I always caution people, you know, and I'll check people with me and say, whoa, wait a minute. You know, there's unlimited good here. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not here. There's unlimited possibilities. Don't block yourself in to what your mind thinks is possible. This is the only way that some good is going to come into your life. It becomes that's blocked. No good's going to come in. Infinite ways miracles can happen. Your mind will call them miracles, but they're just demonstrations of truth, you know. So why block yourself in? Just stop it. Just say you don't know how it's going to happen right now. You're available to it. Let's see what happens. Let the universal presence, through its laws, shock and surprise you.
Normalize that.
Right, normalize that. Yeah.
You know, I'm literally just still ruminating on normalizing fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's a system within us that, of course, has provided us value over our evolution for sure. But today, to live in that state habitually, we're not wired up to live that way. We're not designed to be that way. And so even with so many folks having their aspirations, goals, you know, everybody listening right now has incredible potential to achieve things beyond our wildest imagination.
Right.
But I think so often, and fear being a big driving force of this, we get caught up in what if instead of what is. Mm-hmm. So how do we go from what if to what is?
Yeah. Well, what if can also be used positively. You know, what if everything works out? Cool. You know, what if I have more than enough money? You can go there and you'll get to what is. Because what is that right here and right now, all of the power, all of the presence, all of the intelligence, all of the love, all that is already here. It's already here. It may be latent within us, but it is here. And as we begin to think like that and contemplate that truth, our frequency rises. We begin to hang in that awareness. Now, what has happened is that individuals have normalized fear, which means their attention is more on what they don't want than on what they do want. So what people don't understand is that anything you don't want, you're having a relationship with it. It's existing, and you're not wanting it. And so people walk out, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to correct the Rona. I don't want to catch the coronavirus. I don't want to. So in that moment of I don't want to, the law doesn't distinguish between what you want and don't want. It only knows what you're interested in. And so if you're interested in not getting robbed, not getting poor, not catching a disease, you're in relationship with that. And then that's what you manifest. Now, you may not manifest that exactly, but your body temple doesn't know the difference. You'll still produce toxic chemicals, immediate toxic chemicals, create the condition for disease. So I teach people, you get what you want or don't want. The law doesn't differentiate. So stop placing all of your attention on what you don't want to happen and begin to place your attention on what you like to see unfold in your life. Begin to describe it. You know, the law says, you don't describe what you see what you describe. So if you're living in an accurate description of possibility, then the law starts to bring that into manifestation, you see. And now most people should be taught this in elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, but instead, we have the nefarious forces that keep people in fear, and keeping them all pumped up about what to be afraid of next. Oh, the Russians. Oh, Corona. Oh, aliens. Oh, whatever it is. People are nervous. We're not meant to be like that. We are an absolute reflection of the entire cosmos. What do we have to be afraid of? There's no such thing as death, you see. So there's no loss in the cosmic scheme, but everybody they've allowed themselves to shrink into being a little old something. And then they normalize their fear. Shakespeare said a coward dies 1,000 deaths. Constantly, even before anything even happens. They've rehearsed all the negative stuff. You know, it's not funny, but it is kind of a comedy, you know, what human beings do to themselves. What I see is that we're in the middle of a great awakening, you know, and you're seeing the crumbling of the old paradigm, and you're seeing the emergence of what's happening new, both in the same space and the same time. You know, Newtonian physics, that can't exist. You can't have two objects in the same space, same time. But in quantum reality, you can have everything in the same space at the same time, but they're vibrating at different levels. So you have the old paradigm, fear, worry, lack, limitation, scarcity, not enough jobs, not enough this, not enough that. That's not real. That's made up, you know. And so what's happening is a crumbling of the old, where people are going to be forced to really get a sense of who they are and stop leaning on external things like governments and politicians and things of that particular nature. I mean, I tell people the only authority you have is the authority of your own conviction. That's the authority. You can't outsource your authority to someone out there. Those people work for you. You don't work for them. They work for you. And so your attention has to be on what kind of life you want to live and how that can assist you to live that life. Now, if you don't have a vision, then they're going to tell you what your vision is. If you don't have your own possibility for your own life, then you're going to listen to these people, and they're going to run your life, you see. So the idea is that we're in a great awakening. Everything is shifting. The world of phenomena is moving really fast, and there's an emergence taking place. There's people becoming more sovereign, people taking their authority back, people that are saying hell no. I mean, it's very similar to the vibration of during the Vietnam War when people woke up and said, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to go kill these people we don't know? Why? Why are we doing this? And nobody could give an answer. You know what I mean? So it's a stream of consciousness that's happening. And again, you don't see it because it's not on the news. But there's many people that are coming to an understanding that their own authority is here. It's their connection to the universe, not connection to a party, Republican, Democrat, Independent. You know, it's connected to something else. And you'll also notice these days that people that used to be diametrically opposed to each other are now sharing some of the same, they're in agreement with some of the same things. It used to be everything was black or white, Republican, Democrat. Now it's like, that guy over there, I agree with what he's saying. You know, so there's
for a growing number of people that's happening. Yes.
Yes. So there's a whole breaking down of what used to be black and white, this and that, to there's something happening. Yeah. You know, and I think that's a precursor to something breaking down, to something else emerging. We have our inner authority connected to the presence. You know, we begin to have a vision of the kind of world we want to live in. We start to walk in that direction. Again, the reporters are reporting from the old paradigm. We're seeking to report from something new that's emerging. That means you have to see the invisible in order to do the impossible. You know, every great thing that's ever happened in life, it was invisible. Somebody saw it. I remember when people used to say apartheid was going to be here forever. That was the thing. It's no way that these people are going to give up control and power. But it was, somebody saw it. And then one day, that was the new paradigm. Yeah. Berlin Wall came down. You know, that was never going to come down. So there are a lot of things we're dealing with now. The highest frequency always wins. That's a law. The highest frequency is more powerful than the lower frequency. A thought that emerges from a field of fear, worry, control, domination, manipulation has less power than a thought that's emerging from a field of love.
So before the pandemic, we were at epidemic levels of anxiety, depression, ADHD, addictions, the opioid epidemic, for example. Depression was at 8.5% of the population. And then the pandemic hit. And by August of 2020, it was at 28% of the population. It had more than tripled. So not since the Great Depression has there been this level of unhappiness. And as I saw that, I'm like, but you can learn to be happy. whatever situation you're in, you just have to know the neuroscience of it, because happiness is ultimately a brain function. And as I was tackling this, I came across a video that I just love by Dennis Prager called Why Be Happy? And in it, he says, happiness is a moral obligation. And I'm like, what? So I grew up Roman Catholic, and I went to Catholic school and Catholic high school, and I guarantee you that idea that happiness is a moral obligation was nowhere to be found, that it was about guilt and control and shame. And then it's like, so why is it a moral obligation? Because of how you impact other people. I guarantee you, and you know about this, if you're raised by an unhappy parent or married to an unhappy spouse, and you ask somebody, is happiness an ethical issue? And I guarantee you they're going to say yes. And so what we're talking about is not fluff. It's critical and central, and ultimately it's what everybody wants. But they don't know how to do it. And in the book, in the opening, I start with the lies of happiness. Like more of something will make you happier. And I have a #1 New York Times best-selling book. Another one's not going to make me happier. That ultimately happiness is in the little things that happen day in and day out. That hedonism is the enemy of happiness because it wears out your pleasure centers.
So that's hedonic adaptation. So the brain is, like you just said, you already hit #1 New York Times. There isn't like a number above 1 unless you're just like, I want all of them. I want all the spots, you know. And some people think like that, you know, and you've seen this, and I know that I've seen this as well. When folks, you know, they win the championship or they achieve that highest level in whatever it is that they're doing, and then they sink. They kind of lose themselves. And it's because the brain gets acclimated to that high. Even the pleasure things that we seek today, I would imagine, like if we're, you know, whether people are utilizing technology or porn or whatever the case might be, you constantly need more and more and more to have that same level of normalcy in a sense. Is that accurate?
There's a neuroscience of happiness. And the area in your brain that feels pleasure is called the nucleus accumbens. And it responds to a number of neurotransmitters, but primarily dopamine. And when dopamine hits it, you go, oh, I like that. But if it hits it too strong, cocaine, or too often, addiction, it wears it out. And then you need to engage in that behavior, not to feel high, but to feel okay. And this is why fame is a disaster for the brain. And I've been blessed. I'm in Justin Bieber's docuseries Seasons to be his doctor, and Miley Cyrus, and I adore these kids. But what happened to them is just a disaster for brain function, that they get so much cool stuff, right, from money and drugs and
Notoriety.
fame and notoriety, and anything they want, but doesn't make them happy. In fact, it makes them sad. And they don't know that we have to protect them rather than, like Justin was on tour and he had to end it early because everything around the fame was then making it worse. So not sleeping, overworking, video games, bad food, drugs, all the girl, you know, it's like everything to wear out that part of your brain, and you just end up feeling awful. And people go, but you have everything, but not a healthy brain.
Yeah, that's powerful. So the neuroscience, so what would a healthy brain look like from a neuroscience perspective?
So I did a study for this book where I gave 500 consecutive patients to Amen Clinics the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire. And then I scan them, because that's what we do at Amen Clinics. I now have 10 clinics around the country. And we looked at people at high happiness scores versus low happiness scores. And you had better frontal lobe function if you were in the high happiness group. And you had low frontal lobe function in the low happiness group, which means don't let children hit soccer balls with their foreheads. That's a really bad idea. Marijuana is not a health food because it drops blood flow to the brain. Alcohol is not a health food because it drops blood flow. And if you have low blood flow to your front part of your brain, you end up making impulsive decisions that damage your relationship, less happiness.
Oh man. So these exposures, so the prefrontal cortex is going to be more correlated with happiness? Is that what I'm hearing?
Good activity
Good
in
activity.
the prefrontal cortex is associated with happiness, and low activity is associated with depression.
Is there such thing as a cohesive brain versus a brain that's going to have a tendency towards lack of focus or unhappiness? Or can you see these states when you look at somebody's brain?
Well, you can clearly see the state of the brain. You can clearly see how healthy or not it is. So when I first started doing imaging, I scanned everybody I knew. And I scanned my mom when she was 60. And she had a stunningly beautiful brain, full, even, symmetrical. And it reflected her life. She has 7 children, 54 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She knows everybody's birthday. She's everybody's best friend. She knows about their lives. I mean, she's 90 now. I mean, it's just stunning. And then I scanned myself, and it wasn't healthy because I played football like you. I played football in high school, and I had a lot of bad habits. I was overweight. I was eating a lot of fast food. I wasn't sleeping. And here I am, a double board certified psychiatrist. This is 1991. I'm board certified in general psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry. I don't care about my own brain at all because I'd never seen it. And when I looked at it, I became horrified, and I developed a concept I call brain envy. Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. Not seen it once. What you really, I wanted her brain. I had brain envy. And we have a foundation, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life Foundation, and it makes t-shirts. And on the back it says Freud was wrong, and the front says it's the brain. So we love that. And when you see it, and then you correlate happiness to brain function, it's you want a better brain.
Yeah.
And if you want to be happy, the foundational secret, because there's a lot of books on happiness, but none of them talk about the foundational secret to happiness is your brain. With a healthy brain, you're much more likely to be happy.
My job, your job is to get up and like you. And every other like on Facebook is bonus. But you liked you first. Yeah. And I think the journey to liking you, the journey to getting to that place, that's where everyone's seeking. That's what people seek when they step on my campus. That's what people seek. And ideally, we watch people get to that point when they've studied with us for a while. And what that looks like is, if you want to know, in my opinion, the first thing to do is to become whole and complete with every decision you've ever made. Because we're holding ourselves hostage to our past decisions, actions, behaviors, the things we did that we felt we shouldn't do, and the things that we felt we should have taken a leap on that we didn't take a leap on. So one, become whole and complete with all of your past decisions. Because when you know more, you do more. And you made all your decisions based on what you knew at the time. And you can't measure the man or woman you are based on the decision you made back then, based on what you know now. You didn't know then what you know now. If I knew then at 29, what I know now at 51, excitedly my 51, I wouldn't have made those decisions. But I knew what I knew. And so I did what I did based on what I knew. So one, become whole and complete with with all your decisions. Two, recognize that forgiveness is not about partnering anyone else in your life. Decision is about opening up more internal real estate for love and possibility in yourself. So I think forgiveness of yourself and forgiveness of others. So if you ask me the two things, one is to become whole and complete with your decisions and your actions from 20 years ago. Become whole and complete with those because you knew what you knew. That's why you did what you did. And two, recognize that forgiveness is not about partnering a behavior. It's not about giving. It's not about giving acceptance to what occurred. It's about opening up more real estate in your body, in your heart, and in your soul for what's possible in the future. Because two things can't occupy the same space. So where there's hate, anger, shame, blame, there cannot be love and possibility. Those two things, if you just focus on those two things, I can give you a list of 12 things, but those two can keep you busy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
laser
Yes.
focus. We often operate like a floodlight, trying to cover a whole lot of ground when we should operate like a laser. Let me penetrate this. Let me master this. Let me heal this. Let me go back. When I decided to forgive my son's father, that's all I worked on for a year. That's every exercise I did was about him because I didn't want to keep touching it for the next 10 years. Now I have a beautiful relationship with him. I spotlighted him at my conference. He calls me on the phone. I tell him, call me from prison. He calls me on the phone. I put him on the mic system. I spotlight him. He's written 14 books in prison. Like now I use him as the model example for get it done no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Because I did the work. I forgave myself. I was in an abusive relationship where my fiance at the time picked me up and threw me 3 feet across the room. And then he choked me until I passed out. 13 years later, I ran into him at a conference. I couldn't go to his state. I was so afraid that I would run into him. And he's 6'9", 310 pounds. He was huge. So he was physically imposing as well as physically imposing in my life. And I did the work on him. I did the work on him for 9 straight years. 9 straight years. So when I ran into him, he came to my conference, so it was very intentional. He came to ask for my forgiveness. And I said, I needed to give myself life. So I forgave you a long time ago for me. So you just need to forgive you because I already did the work. I had no angst or energy or anger around him. I felt a little uncomfortable, but there was no residual anger because I had to fall madly in love with Lisa. The woman you see sitting here is simply the result of saying, what does it look like to fall madly in love with me? And not in a bragging way, not in a way that spews onto other people, but in a way that I say every day I'm going to give myself a chance. Every day I get to press reset. I get to press reset 1,000 times. And when I get to 999, I get to press reset on the reset button. And what happens if I did that? And so you're right. Valuing who I show up to be means pardoning myself from all my choices that I've been judging and I've had shame around. And then it also means forgiving myself and others for the times in which their actions didn't align with their heart. I think it's those two things, accepting and forgiving. And those have been the two biggest things in my life.
Well, let's come down to a fact of science so we get this clear. Less than 1% of disease is connected to genes. So I say, where the hell is all the disease coming from? And it goes, it's coming from stress. And I say, what's stress? Now, this is really important because stress is anything that gets in the way of your destination. I want to have this, I want to go there, whatever, and then something gets in the way that, provokes stress. And I go, so why is it relevant? Because stress is the cause of disease of 90% of the people. And I say, why is that relevant? Again, that's not genetic, that's a perception. I am stressed because I believe I'm stressed, and therefore my cells are going to respond to my stress. Whether it's real or not, the cells can't see it. They only are based on what I believe. So stress interferes with the immune system. Let's do stress right now because the whole world's in a stress situation. So let me give you the 3 fundamental things that happen when you're in stress. Why do we recognize stress for? And I go, because we're being threatened. That's what stress means. Something's threatening you. Let's go back, thousands of years. And I say, what was the stress? I say, saber-toothed tiger. I go, oh, Okay. I say, well, what happens when the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you? I say, you got to run like hell. I say, well, what organs in your body do you use to deal with stress? I go, arms and legs. Escape. So I say, now here comes the next point. If I'm going to need those organs to escape from the tiger, then here's the most important thing. I need to give them energy, because without energy, the muscles aren't going to work. So I say, what provides energy? I say, blood. So I go, oh, why is it relevant? Now here it comes. When I perceive a stress hormones' function is to provide as much blood to my arms and legs as I can get, because I need all of that energy to run away from the tiger. So I say, well, where's it getting the blood from? I said, well, the heart's pumping the blood. Yeah, but it's pumping it all over the body. So I say, well, when the blood is in my gut, what is the function of the organs? Lungs, gut, all those organs in there. I say, maintenance of the body, health of the body, fixing the body, and all that. And I say, well, if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, do you think it's good to invest in taking care of your body at this point? I go, what a waste of time. If the tiger catches you, the hell with the body. It's not going to exist anyway. So here's number one. When stress is perceived, stress hormones released into the body cause the blood vessels in the gut to squeeze shut. I go, why? Because when they squeeze shut, the blood is pushed to the outside, arms and legs, okay? So I say, yeah, but net consequence? You shut down the blood vessels in the gut and you shut down the maintenance and health of the body. I say, yeah, but for how long? How long does it take to get away from that tiger? 10 minutes? 15 minutes? You're away from the tiger, stress is gone, everything's back in condition again. People can experience this when you get that stress moment. It's like, they call it butterflies in the stomach. They feel like a queasy. I said, what's the queasy? It's the blood vessels squeezing shut. You can feel them. It's like fluttering. Okay, so number one, stress shuts down blood flow to the gut because it's going to make sure the blood goes preferentially to the arms and legs. Number two, and this is critical now, the immune system uses tremendous amount of energy. Most people, when they get really sick, don't even have the energy to get out of bed. So I say, well, let's say I have a bacterial infection and a saber-toothed tiger is chasing me. How should I split my energy? Again, the hell with a bacterial infection. If the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger catches you, the infection doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the tiger's problem. So I go, okay. So what does it mean? Fact. Stress hormones shut off the immune system to conserve energy to run away from the tiger. Okay? And I go, wow, so stress hormones shut it down. I go, so much so, listen, medical doctors use stress hormones therapeutically, meaning if they want to transplant an organ from person A into person B, and you put that organ in, the foreign organ, into the recipient, the immune system of the recipient is going to say, that's foreign, and try and destroy it. And I say, well, what good is the operation if I just take the organ and put it into somebody else and the immune system messes with it? And I go, this is why medical doctors give patients that are going to receive a transplant, they give them stress hormones, because when they give them the stress hormones and then do the transplant, the recipient's immune system is not going to be working, and it will sustain the transplant. How effective of shutting off the immune system? It's used therapeutically to shut off the immune system. Okay, so that's number two. We compromise growth and health. We shut down the immune system. I call the third consequence adding insult to injury. And I go, what do you mean? Well, the brain has, in the forebrain, this is conscious part of the brain. And in the conscious part of the brain, that's creative. Okay? And I go, that's great. And I say, what about the hindbrain? I go, the hindbrain is reflex reaction. And I go, if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, do you want to have consciousness running the show, or do you want to just have reflex reaction carry you away? And the answer is consciousness is too slow. I always say, you're in a car spinning. It just starts to get out of control. I say, if you stay in the conscious mind when that car's going out of control, here's my model. All you're going to do is you're going to just get lost. I say, the moment the car goes out of control, guess what? Stress hormones shut off that immune system, push the blood. When I squeeze the blood vessels in the forebrain, it pushes the blood to the hindbrain where reflexes are going to work. I say, what? I go, we become less intelligent when we're under stress because consciousness is too slow. And when you're running, so I go, so what's the issue? Historically, the stress response was to be used for a short period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You escape the tiger, no more stress. And I go, and what about today? And I go, oh, got a little problem here. 24/7, 365 stress. The system was not designed for that. And this excess stress is responsible for up to 90% of disease on this planet, not genes. Genes, less than 1%. And all of a sudden I say, why is this important? Because if you tell somebody genes cause that, then that gives them, oh, I'm not responsible. The genes did it. I go, no, because if you feel you're not responsible, you shut off your control. And that's the point. I am in control.
Man, this is so powerful. What really struck me the most was when you said we become less intelligent when we're under stress. And I think this is one of the most well-seen things right now with people infighting. There's a big lack of intelligence and even empathy and compassion, and these higher order things are going to get put on the back burner.
Yeah, let me give you an example about the difference between growth and protection, because that's what it comes down to. A stimulus provokes us to do something. If it's a good stimulus, you move to it, like love, food, something you want. That's a stimulus, we move to that stimulus. And then I say, but when you move to it, you go open-armed. Why? I want to take it in. If it's love, I don't want to close myself down. I want to assimilate it. If it's food, I got to open myself up, take it in. So growth means you go to the stimulus open, okay? But what if the stimulus is negative? A threat of any kind. I go, oh, I don't go to the stimulus. I go away from the stimulus. Do I go away, my arms open? I go, no. You close yourself down because of protection. So I say, so what's the difference? Growth, go to a stimulus, arms open. Protection, go away from the stimulus, arms closed. I say, why is it relevant? And here's a simple conclusion. You can't move forwards and backwards at the same time. You can't be open and closed at the same time. So basically it says, if you're in a stress mode, you've shut your system down and growth shut down, and that's okay for a very short period. But if it's chronic, you've killed yourself, essentially. And I say, so why is it relevant? I go, look at today's world. Every time you turn on TV, be afraid, be very afraid, go hide in your house. And I go, wow, that's as scary as hell. I say, why is it relevant? I am getting stress hormones dripping into my system every time I watch that damn TV. I'm getting stress hormones when I read a paper, go and surf the internet. And I go, and what is that doing for you? And I say, it is compromising your health. I go, oh. I say, that's where disease comes from. Not from the genes, but you shut yourself down. And then, as I said, you become less intelligent. Then what do? Defer to the boss. Who's the one that's going to protect me? Whatever they say, I'm going to do. Why? I'm not thinking. I'm just going to do what they say because they know I don't know. I go, oh my God, have we just screwed the world big time? I go, why? Because the planet is on 24/7 stress. Any compromises to your health have compromised your immune system. Okay? And I go, so what does that mean? Now listen to this. In America, 40% of U.S. citizens have 2 or more, actually 2.7 chronic diseases. 2.7. One chronic disease, 60% of Americans have. But 40% of the Americans have 2.7. I go, so why is it relevant? They're compromised before the damn virus even showed up. And I go, well, why is that relevant? Because when the virus shows up, are they weakened because the virus is so strong? Or are they weakened because their immune system is under stress? And I go, that's the one. I say, but you blame the virus. And then everybody's now afraid. Healthy people are afraid. And I say, so what's the relevant? Well, you got them scared to death. I said, oh, you scared them. I said, what's the result of that? You've messed with their immune system. You've already compromised their immune system because the stress hormones function shut off the immune system. The more you scare them, the worse the consequence of the COVID is. Quantum physics is the most valid science on this planet. It's the one that's been tested the most and verified to be more truthful than any other science. I go, so what? Because what's the first principle of quantum physics? The mind is the creator of our life experiences. And it says your consciousness is creating your life. I go, why is that relevant? Because if you change your consciousness, you can change your life. It's like you don't have to wait for life to change from the outside. It's you on the inside. And so we have been systematically disempowered. You have been manipulated by a belief system, and then belief controls genetics, and belief controls your biology. And if you start with a negative belief, you only end up with a negative biology. It's the only way it happens.
So you already had this book in the works for quite some time. It just happened to come out.
I worked on it for 3 years, yeah.
During this, probably the health crisis of our time. And we were just talking before we got started about one of the pieces of data that you actually took that I shared. And I'm so grateful for that. Looking at the CDC's report, we had this big database of people, 800 US hospitals, over 540,000 COVID-19 patients. Obesity is the number one risk factor for death, which we know.
80%.
We're not doing about it, but we know it. The second leading risk factor for death was anxiety and fear-related disorders, the second leading risk factor for death from this condition.
Right.
And so you even address that too, because our mind plays such a huge role in our outcomes for our health.
To have the CDC, I hadn't seen the study. So I thank you for that before we begin the show. I thank you again, because I put it in my book. To show that is the second leading cause of death from COVID was amazing. But let's just talk for a second about the mind. Everybody knows about placebos, but they may not know that placebos only came about since World War II that we're aware of consciously. It happened because a surgeon there was working on guys, and if you don't give them morphine, they're going to go into shock and they're going to die, not to mention the pain, right? And they ran out of morphine. So a nurse actually, in a desperation, took a saline solution and said, I got the morphine for you, and injected it into these people. And none of them went into shock, and most of them got out of pain. So he was so blown away by this after the war, he went back to Harvard, and he created the initial studies that now are used when you're doing double blind. You compare it to a placebo. But most people are unaware of the fact that placebos sometimes work better than the drugs themselves, because there's no money in telling people that, right? You don't make a lot of billions of dollars of profit in that situation. So what's interesting is the greater the intervention, the more convinced the mind is, the greater result in your body. So a small pill versus a big pill, they see a big difference. An injection versus a pill, the injection gets a better result. The VA did a study on arthroscopic knee surgery, and they decided to do fake surgeries on a third of the people. So they cut them open and did nothing, sewed them back up, and the nurses didn't even know the difference between the people. And 2 years later, the people that had been through the fake surgery, meaning no surgery, whatever, were doing sizably better. So the VA doesn't even cover it anymore. I mean, literally, and then you can give somebody a barbiturate, which they do at Harvard, they've done this, say this pill is an amphetamine, it's gonna speed you up. So you're not giving a placebo, you're giving a real drug that will make your biochemistry slow down and their body speed up. So placebos should give us some sense of the power of what the mind and the body can do together when they're really managed. And when they're not, when we let our minds run wild and we don't learn to run our minds, the last 2 chapters of the book are all about this, as you know, then you find yourself in a place where you're at the mercy of whatever comes to your phone or on your television or CNN. And again, these are good people. They're not bad people, but they're doing their job. Their job is to make money for shareholders. That means they need more attention. And what's their attention better than anything else, unfortunately, is fear. And so today, the news is not designed to inform you. It's designed to startle you, right? Your child could die from drinking water, film at 11. I mean, it's anything to get you to watch. So they're not bad people, but if you don't take control of your own mind, you can do all these other good things for yourself physiologically, and this can change it all like that.
I've failed so many times, and everyone has a different idea of what failure is. People don't even like that word.
Right.
So if you're not reaching your goal in the way that you want to, okay, then we see that as a failure. But people say, grow from it, learn from it, right? And for me, I have this belief in myself that if it's up to me, I'm not gonna fail. because I'm going to do the work that it takes. If it's something that is within my power, but depending on what your goal is, if it involves other people, it involves other people doing things for you, saying yes to you, you may not have control of that situation. So certain things I don't put my heart into. For example, when I did Dancing with the Stars, okay, that was a competition. I wanted to win. I was like, I'm in this to win it. But I knew there's judges and an audience. I'm not going to, at the end, feel like a failure if I don't win. But I'm going to go hard. I'm going to do my absolute best. And I'm going to pray and I'm going to say, whatever's meant to come out of this, I want it to come out of it. I went to the finals. And even though I didn't win the show, I felt like I won because that was right when I decided to stop boxing. And I need to show a different side of myself. Right. And I had 40 million viewers every week, and I made it to the last week. And then I went on to do show hosting and all these other things that I was able to, do off of that platform. So sometimes, you have to just say, I'm going to put my all into this, and I'm going to let God. Okay. And whatever is supposed to come out of this, come out of it. I'm not going to see it as a failure because I didn't win, because I can really look around and have gratitude and say, wow, look how this has changed my life as planned. But I did what I need to do. I earned it and I got what I need to get. And people got the opportunity to get to know me in a different way outside of the ring. So for me, like I said, again, it's perspective, and understanding that not everything's going to go exactly the way that you want it to. Boxing is very different because, I get in that ring, you're either going to win or you're going to lose. There's only two people. And I'll be damned if I don't win. Okay? Because she has two hands, I have two hands. Yeah. That's it. Nobody's going to hit me from behind. There's no army. It's on. That's a different situation. But so you really have to go into every situation with the right mindset. Yeah. I think is really important. But absolutely, I've been told no more than I've been told yes. When you talk about just ideas and things that I want to do, ambitions that I have, there's so much more that I want to do. I have, my bio and people go, oh my God, you've done so much. You've accomplished so much, but I want more for myself. I want more. I have more that I want to do that I haven't done yet. And that's what my passion keeps me going. I don't sit and go, oh yeah, I been there, done that. It's like, what more can I do? I wake up excited. How many more people can I help? How many more lives can I touch? It's wonderful to be seen as successful and for people to look up to you and to be a role model. Yeah. But that's not what I think about every day. I think about living my life, accomplishing my goals, and having integrity, along the way. And then, then we can talk about the bio and the legacy later. You know what I mean?
You said, number one, you have to take ownership of yourself. Again, very practical. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, okay, yes, you didn't get good grades. Why? Well, my teacher don't like me. I remember my mom used to be like, yo, you don't got no teacher that like you? She was like, yo, what are you doing? Like, don't know, like every teacher's against you. Like, that don't even sound right. But when you're a victim, it's always blah, blah, blah. And so I had to ask myself, okay, yeah, let's say teachers don't like you. And then, bro, it got real bad when I started like studying history, especially Black history. And I'm looking at the Little Rock Nine. Like, yo, you got 9 kids going to a predominantly white institution with the National Guards. Like, they got to get escorted every day with the military and dogs. So they're literally going into a school where these teachers don't particularly care for them. You got other grown people outside spitting at them, calling them all kind of stuff. And bro, they managed to go in there and graduate and go to college and do. Yeah. It's like, you mean to tell me you ain't go, like, they got police, like, they got a real problem. All your teachers is in the urban community like you, they Black like you. Like, what? Tell me again what the problem is. Like, your teachers aren't against you, like, for real. So I was like, yo, bro, fess up. You're not studying. You do have some type of learning disability, whatever that is, but not to the point that you can't learn. It just means that you may have to read the book 5 times when somebody read it 1 time and they get it. And I used to be like, well, he could read it and get it. Why can't I? It's like, no, if it takes 5 times, just read it 5 times. So I had to take responsibility for, you're not going to class, you're not paying attention. When you are in class, you're daydreaming, you're not time on task, you're not meeting with the teacher afterwards or before, you're not meeting with other friends that know how to study and asking them what to, bruh, you're giving 50, 60%. What are you expecting? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to give 120, and then if you fail at 120, and Shawn, let me tell you something, bruh. I tell students this all the time. Yo, when you go to every class, when you read, when you take every test, when you do every assignment, I don't even care if you fail. A teacher's gonna give you, I do this in schools.
Yeah.
I ask teachers to stand and I say, look, I come to every class, I raise my hand, I'm not disrespectful. Tell me what grade I'm gonna get. They're like, yo, I was gonna be real with you. At least a C plus B minus. At least. Like without even getting hundreds on tests. Yeah. And so for me, it just meant, Eric, what part do you play in your own destruction? Own that. Own that part. Don't put it on your wife, your kids, the country. Bro, I got some stuff I can say about every entity. But I'm telling you, bro, when I start taking full ownership, full responsibility, I literally got my control. And I woke up one day, bro, was like, yo, I can't even believe I'm here. Like, I can't believe I went from that to this. Mm-hmm. But it's all because when you take responsibility, as you said from the book, at that point, you get a power that is lended to you. There's a source, you know what I'm saying, that's like, yo, bro, I got you. I'm back you up. It's like when I used to be young and I played Miss Pac-Man and I get the banana, the strawberry, you know, the pear. You know what I'm saying? You start eating them jokers and you hitting the power, boom, they running from me. It was like when I took responsibility, everything that once was attacking me is now running from me. And everything that I once feared, I'm chasing it. I'm going after it now. And it was all the power pill I didn't realize was ownership, was taking responsibility.
The gym is probably the most fair place in the world to me. Meaning, whatever you put in, it's equitable in terms of what you get back. And I think people go in, or I've seen people go in and they give 40% and they want 100 back. And I'm like, you're going to get 40 back. And when you leave, if you start dicking around with your diet or your sleep or your recovery protocols or your stress levels, that's going to come out of that 40. So you have to me, you go in and you give 100, which doesn't mean every workout, you know, looks like a Rocky montage, but it means every workout you got to give 100% of whatever you have that day. And we don't all come in at 100% every day. That goes from pro athletes to Academy Award winners. You just don't. So you have to give 100% of whatever your 100 is that day. And you will get that back every single time. And if you're doing resistance training versus just cardio, that's a physiology thing. You speak to that. There's a return on that investment, right? The epoch post-training that you're going to get. So if you put in that work, it's going to keep paying you. It's going to pay dividends well beyond what you thought you were doing in the gym. So people go, oh, I really didn't do much today. Don't do that. Don't beat yourself up for what you didn't do. Give yourself credit for what you did do, because there are going to be days when you can give 200% and there are going to be days when you can give 50, but that 50 better be 100% of what you brought in. We have something written in the gym that says, everything you do inside the gym makes everything you do outside the gym better. And I see that every day in my own life and in other people's lives. So the take home from that is, obviously, whatever your physical tasks are in life will be easier because you're training above and beyond that, right? Whatever you're carrying, lifting, pushing, pulling, hinging, lunging, whatever in the gym, whatever you have to do in real life, easy, because you've already done it and you've done it heavier. It improves your patience. It improves your quality of sleep. You're a better spouse. You're a better parent. You're a better friend. You're more resistant to injury. You're more resistant to disease, illness. Your rate of absenteeism goes down at work. You become a better employee or a better boss. You earn more. That's rewarded. That reward, whether it's financial or whatever, people look at you and go, wow, this guy's, always healthy, always upbeat. Your moods are better, improve moods. And this is all science. I'm not telling you anything like people go, I don't really feel that way. Yeah, scientifically you do. Those are all things that happen at a physiological level. And then your self-confidence goes up because of all those other things that have happened, because of what you did in the gym. And then that just, to me, opens up so many other doors.
2 musts. I'll give you the 2 huge musts for me. One was my self-confidence. I grew up not a very self-confident person, and so you have to have high self-confidence. Any world-class athlete, you and I both know, their self-confidence level is through the roof. And when they go in a slump, When they're not performing well, what's going on? They've lost their confidence. They haven't lost their ability to shoot or hit a ball or hit a golf ball. They've lost their confidence. They've lost their swag. So where's confidence come from? Like, I knew I had to become more confident. Confidence comes from this, because the disease of lack of confidence is you're obsessed with everybody else thinks about you. What are they going to think? What are they going to think? What are they going to think? That's the symptom. The disease is you're worried about your reputation with everybody else because you don't have a good one with you. If your reputation with self is exemplary, you're not concerned about your reputation with others. So self-confidence comes from one simple thing. It comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself. That's it. If you begin to consistently keep the promises you make to you, you will begin to stack upon that self-confidence. And so I set up my life where I started to keep promises I made to me, whether that was what time I got up in the morning, what I put in my mouth to eat, when I trained and worked out. I can't control outcomes, but I can control activity. So in my business life, I'm gonna make 15 phone calls today. I'd make my 15, and I'd be conscious of saying, I did what I said I was gonna do. I did what I said I was gonna do. And through that process, over a period of time, every day, every hour that went by, I kept keeping more and more promises to me. I began to trust me. My self-confidence level transformed. That was number one. Second thing was my identity. You'll never exceed in your life what you think you're worth. Everyone talks about this, but you'll never exceed your identity any time in your life. And your identity is your self-worth, what you believe you deserve. Okay, now, self-worth and identity is like a thermostat. It sits on the wall of your life. It sets the entire temperature for your life. So in every area, you have a spiritual thermostat, a financial, a business, a physical one, a wellness one. So if that thermostat is set at, let's say financially, at 80 degrees, it's set at 80 degrees, no matter what you do, you've already experienced it. If you start to heat your life up, you start having abundance come into it, and you're doing activities that are better, but you haven't changed your identity, you will find a way to cool your life right back down to where your identity is eventually. You'll make a bad investment decision. A car will break down. It'll all seem unconscious, but you will get back to 80 degrees of money. Okay? The reverse is also true. You start to go broke, your car gets repoed, the water gets turned off. You find a way to heat it back up and get it back to 80 degrees again. So the key in life is to have self-confidence and change that thermostat level of what you think you're worth. You could be in the best business model with the best opportunity, the best products, the best everything, and you will not exceed 80 degrees of identity if that's your identity in your life. Happiness has an identity. Faith has an identity. And so the key thing is, how do you shift that identity, right? And that identity then is shifted through a couple things, but the biggest one is associations. Biggest way we change your identity, if let's say you hung around a guy worth a couple $100 million. If I'm a 150 degreer financially and you're an 80 degreer, through proximity over time, I will heat you up somewhere in between the two of us. And if your faith, if you have you struggle with your faith or your relationships, but you surround yourself with people that have great faith or great marriages, through association, yours improve. So the biggest way I change my identity is through who I hung around. Hanging around, lastly, is also, I don't have to physically be around you. I can read your book. I can read a book from you on health, on sleep. And when I read that book, I'm not just reading pages, I'm pretending as if I'm with you. I'm associating with you. And so a lot of my identity shifts came from books I read and things I listened to and people that were live in my life at the same time. That's how I changed it.
Well, you know, that, Shawn, is without question one of the most important subjects. Dr. Maxwell Maltz wrote a phenomenal book on it, Psychocybernetics, way back around 1960. And it was considered one of the greatest psychological breakthroughs of his generation. Self-image, unfortunately, is developed before the person can even walk or talk. Our self-image is formed in our little life when our subjective mind is wide open. It's part of it's genetic and the other part's environmental. Our mind is wide open, our subconscious mind. And whatever's going on around us goes right into our subconscious mind. Like almost all welfare recipients are third, fourth, fifth generation welfare recipients.
Yeah.
Now, do you know there's geniuses locked up in those welfare areas? Yeah. Every one of them has genius within them. They have perfection within them. But it'll never come to the surface because they don't wake up. I had an absolutely horrible self-image. That's why I wouldn't learn. That's why I wouldn't go to school. I never thought anything of me. I wouldn't try to get a good job. And when I started to read Think and Grow Rich, and I started to listen to a man by the name of Ray Stanford, he got me looking at myself. He said, Bob, you're telling me reasons why you can't win, why you're broke. Let's go to the other side and talk about how you can. And he got me thinking of all this. And then I got into really studying self-image. And I found that we do have a cybernetic mechanism in our mind. It's like a thermostat. It's a science of control and communication in the animal and some machines. And this cybernetic mechanism, this self-image, it controls what we're doing. And if we wander off course, it'll bring us right back. If a person's overweight, it's how they see themselves. And they say, I'm going to lose weight. They've got to change the image or they're never going to lose weight. Yeah. And they shouldn't lose it anyway. They should release it. Yeah. When you lose anything, you're programmed to look for it. Right. And you always find it. So we've got to understand that we have an image of ourselves in our subconscious mind, but we have the godlike ability to change it. I worked at changing my self-image. I changed the way I talk. I changed the way I walk. I changed the way I dress. I changed the way I work. I changed the way I study. I changed everything about me, a little bit at a time. So the image or the person you're looking at now is not the person that picked up this book 55 years ago. And I modeled it. I built the image, and then I caused myself to live that way. And it caused a lot of discomfort. William James gives the idea. He said, act like the person you want to become. I encourage people in our programs to get Stella Adler's book, The Art of Acting. The Art of Acting is a great book. Stella Adler never actually wrote the book. A man named Kissel took all her lessons after she died and turned it into a book. So when you read the book, you're going to her acting classes. Stella Adler was a phenomenal acting teacher. She studied under Stanislavski, the Russian who perfected method acting. Marlon Brando wrote the foreword in the book, and he was the first method actor to hit star status. But we have to, when we're changing the self-image, we have to change the way we act. And other people have difficulty with it. They know you the way they are. They don't want you to change. Because if you change, they have to adapt to the change in you. Yeah. See, people don't resist change. People resist being changed.
Yes.
That's right.
We've got to change ourselves. We've got to build a new image, a picture in our mind. We've got to see ourselves the way we want to be, and then we have to live with it. You go to the gym workout, that's what you do. You build a picture of how you want to see this arm, and you build that picture, and then you build the body. Well, you build the life in your mind. Take your pen and write out how you want to live. And always start by writing, I'm so happy and grateful now that. And the second you write it, you've got it intellectually. The moment you impress it upon your emotional mind, you've got it emotionally. And it's only a period of time till it manifests on the physical plane.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to optimize your mindset.
Most people suffer from an attention deficit disorder and an intention deficit disorder. So their mind is all over the place. Their mind has been hijacked by worry, fear, anxiety,